After sweeping the Oregon schools on the road last weekend, ASU gets swept at home this weekend. USC sealing the deal with a 77-69 victory over the Sun Devils tonight at DFA. Welcome to the Devil's Digest postgame analysis. My name's Nick Borgia. Alongside me is publisher Hode Urbino. And Hode, just 2 nights ago we were up here talking about that UCLA loss and how that score wasn't really indicative of how that game went. And tonight we're going to do the same, except this time we might be on the other side of things, as ASU was thoroughly dominated in this one.
Yeah, absolutely right, Nick. I mean, if it wasn't for a 16-0 run by Arizona State, which obviously was way too little, way too late, the score would be a little uglier, so to speak. And you're right, it would be probably more indicative of what we saw tonight. Absolute lack of energy by the Sun Devils. Warren Washington and the post game called it embarrassing. Bobby Hurley called the game atrocious, especially on the defensive end. So absolutely very, very disheartening that after a UCLA game, which did, I'm not going to call it a moral victory, but definitely was a performance that maybe left you with some kind of hope if you're an ASU fan that this season probably could be special. But against a team like USC on Saturday night, Arizona State flat out did not show at all. Again, the scoreboard might be somewhat kind for Arizona State, and yes, this is one of the better teams in the Pac-12 that Arizona State lost to. But really, no excuse for what we saw by Arizona State.
And on the offensive side, it was only Desmond Cambridge Jr. and Warren Washington that hit double-digit points for the Sun Devils. Everywhere else just seemed lack of energy, like you said, no spark. Just what was your thoughts on the offensive side?
Yeah, I mean, you first look at DJ Horn, and we just sat here 2 nights ago talking about him scoring, I believe it was 14 points against UCLA, but none of them in the second half, and 0 points against USC. If this is not an injury issue, Nick, then this is something that is definitely a serious issue that Arizona State really has to address. I mean, from one of your offensive leaders to have 2 performances in a row to be absolutely poor performances. And granted, in the grand scheme of things, definitely an aberration. DJ Horn was definitely having a fine season. It's not like Arizona State has been successful despite the play of DJ Horn. He's been a huge part, but I think it goes without saying that when DJ Horn is not playing, let alone playing well, that it's really, really hard for this ASU offense to function at a high level, especially when you have such great defensive teams like UCLA and like USC. And both of them really have their own style defensively. I mean, it didn't really matter because it really gave fits to Arizona State 2 games in a row. But UCLA is more like the grind you down defense. And USC, as we saw tonight, a lot of length, a lot of athleticism, just a bunch of gazelles just running out there, really making Arizona State's life hard on the perimeter, in the paint, and basically when you don't have, again, one of your biggest offensive weapons in DJ Horn, that definitely makes life that much difficult. Desmond Cambridge, I mean, did score 17 points, like you said, but I believe 12 of them came in the second half. So just that imbalance from a guy like that, Desmond Cambridge, definitely hurts. Warren Washington's 21 points, by the way, were tied for a career high for the ASU center. But other than that, we just saw really poor play from the other starters, not that great play from the bench overall. And, here we are talking about Arizona State with back-to-back losses.
And defensively, obviously, one of the worst performances on the year. And you mentioned it earlier, Bobby Hurley calling the defensive performance atrocious in the post-game press conference. I mean, what were your thoughts on the defense, Hode?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the stat sheet, and sometimes the stat sheet can be somewhat deceiving, but I think it's very clear that when Arizona State gives up a 45% shooting performance in the first half for USC, 53% shooting in the second half for a team that really, by and large, their DNA has been stout defensive play, game in and game out. I mean, to see Arizona State holding their opponents for under 40%, that is not really a fluke at all if you look into the body of work for the entire season. But tonight against USC, they just didn't have answers at all, whether it's Drew Peterson and Boogie Ellis shooting from the outside or just the inside play. And again, I mean, not to belabor the point, but USC's length really gave ASU a lot of fits on both ends of the court. USC had 38 points in the paint. So when you just have that inside-outside game for the USC's offense working almost to perfection. It was really hard for ASU to generate any stops. I know some people might ask, well, what happened in that 16-0 run by Arizona State? And I think just flat out, USC just took the foot way off the gas pedal and allowed ASU to make the score maybe somewhat respectable. But overall, I think Arizona State, again, the struggles are just really just any aspect of the game that they can think of that really were there. And again, you just give USC a lot of credit for having a very, very balanced offense and really destroying this ASU defense off kilter.
So, as I had mentioned earlier, ASU sweeps the Oregon schools last weekend on the road, and they come home and get swept by the LA schools. Obviously, the UCLA loss, a little bit maybe more respectable than the USC loss, but what's next for this team, Hode? How can they move forward after a series like this one?
Well, it's almost like a glass half full, half empty. So let's start with the half full. I mean, you're almost at the midpoint of conference play. You're 6-3. That is a record that a lot of teams in the Pac-12 would love to trade places with you. You look at the 3 losses. Very disappointing that all of them happened at home. I mean, Arizona State not able to defend home court against some of the best teams in the Pac-12, but at the same time, they did lose not to any team in the basement or even middle of the pack. I mean, they lost to both LA schools in Arizona. I'm not saying that really should be a comforting thought, but if those 3 losses, let's say, came to USC, Cal, and Oregon State, I think you have a whole different perspective on that, altogether. Now, the glass half empty is that all those teams that you lost to at home, not going to face them on the road. And I'm not saying you should pencil the road games at Arizona and at both LA schools. By the way, the 3 games that are going to end the regular season as losses, but those are games that maybe don't have the highest probability of wins for Arizona State. So the Sun Devils really have a lot of ground to make up, and they're traveling to the state of Washington this weekend. Even though those 2 teams that they just beat at home a couple weeks ago, I think that it's definitely not going to be any really sigh of relief to meet those opponents. And really, Arizona State is a team that really has to look itself in the mirror hard. Really has a lot of soul searching to do. Maybe that players only meeting is going to take place sooner rather than later. But there really seems like a lot to fix for Arizona State. Like I said, Nick, in the beginning of our feature, there was so much momentum coming in to these 2 games against UCLA. We saw a great crowd of 13,000 against the Bruins just 2 nights ago, over 10,000 tonight. So I think the community really thought that this Arizona State team can be special, can really get over the hump. And obviously the record, both overall 15-5, 6-3 in the conference, is not horrible. But when you talk about momentum, all the momentum, like you said, that they had coming into this weekend absolutely vanished. And right now, when you go on the road and you're just maybe hoping for a split, just to going to keep your hopes alive to finish in the top 4 in the Pac-12, earn that bye week in the Pac-12 tournament. Now Arizona State really is almost in a situation where they're going to have to sweep the Washington schools, just like they did the Oregon schools last week, and that's obviously easier said than done. I mean, these 2 LA schools, just against the Washington schools on the road a couple weeks ago, really had a hard time. So for Arizona State, there is a lot to fix. I think it's fixable aspects that really can be addressed. But overall, I mean, Arizona State right now is not in a great spot. But you're only as good as your last game, and maybe right now the situation looks really bleak. We'll see what they can do against the Washington teams on the road. That's going to be, to me, just a huge statement, one way or another, for Arizona State for the rest of the season.
All righty, well, thank you so much, Hode, and as always, for the top coverage surrounding this ASU men's basketball team, keep it locked in DevilsDigest.com. Also drop a follow on Twitter at DevilsDigest. For Hode Urbino and the rest of our Devils Digest staff, I'm Nick Borgia, and we thank you so much for tuning in.